Hi guys, it's Randy. So I'm a little sick today, so I'm home by myself right now. Didn't have to go to work, beautiful thing. So I thought I'd make a little video about I think I have six. Yeah, the 6 books that I would absolutely sell my soul to read for the first time again. I have seen this little trend of a video going around booktube for a while now. I've loved watching them because a lot of these books are books that necessarily aren't like the most popular things right now, but they're the ones that have stuck with people the most, and I feel like that is the most important thing. If a book like holds with you, even if you don't necessarily like absolutely love it maybe the first time, or it's has to take a while to sink in, but I have a few of those myself, and we're just gonna jump right in. This is no particular order. This kind of just the books that I was looking around and I grabbed because I was like, oh that one. But we'll start with a classic, The Sound and the Fury by Mr. William Faulkner. So if you guys didn't know, I just graduated from college. I have a Bachelor of Arts in English Literature, and this book is probably the reason that I decided to do that instead of going into like education or something that a lot of English majors do. I read this my senior year of high school because I was doing a big literary theory paper, or like literary criticism paper, for my AP English class, and I was assigned to do William Faulkner, and I had never read him. I hadn't really heard all that much about him for being a classic, or like a classics author. And I picked this one not knowing anything about it, except that the title has a connection to Shakespeare's Macbeth. But I understood probably 2% of this novel upon reading it for the first time. And if you've read this book, I feel like you will understand exactly what I mean. It is written in this like stream of consciousness style, and it switches between narratives really quickly. It switches and jumps time. It goes back and forth so quickly that you have absolutely no idea what's happening. Like, I had to read like a summary of what was happening as I was reading the book. Like, I would read like a page and I'd be like, okay, what just happened? And it was blowing my mind. Like, anytime that I read something and I read like the summary to like just at least grasp the plot, it was constantly blowing my mind. And there were so many other literary references and just like so much to unpack, and it was so much fun for like my beginner English literary criticism theory brain, because now that's what I'm doing like as my career. And this book just really blew my mind, and I think that it would be fun to read it for the first time again at this stage of my life with someone who has way more education and understanding of literary theory and stuff now. But yeah, so this is probably one of the main ones that I would absolutely die to read again. And then we have a book that I read just last year. We have White Teeth by Zadie Smith. So I don't really see Zadie Smith talked all that much about on BookTube, but I see a good amount of her on Bookstagram. But this I actually read for my literary theory class that I did an independent study with one of my professors last summer, and we read this book together, and it was just so witty and so entertaining. And it was like, it's not like an older book at all. Like, it was written I think in like the early 2000s, if I'm right about that. And it follows like, yeah, 2000. It follows 2 families and their experience being minorities in the UK back in the 80s. And I was particularly moved by the young woman Irie, who has like a really intense focus on like her body size and how she doesn't fit in quite with like the British standard of women's bodies, because she has a much curvier, thicker type of body. And she really struggled with that, and struggled with why she looked like that and how she could make herself not. And it was just so interesting, and I felt like it was a really important read, so I really recommend this book. Like, I think that it's such a relevant, prevalent, well done novel. And I think that in general about Zadie Smith's writing, like I think she's extremely talented and I really love her. But I just loved unpacking this book again from like a literary theory standpoint. This book was so fun to go through and to like annotate, and I wrote like a big paper on it, and I thought that was a lot of fun, aside from the fact that it's just a really, really great book. All right, and then we have a duology that I only have the second book to because I lent out the first one to a friend of mine. But it's the Kingkiller Chronicles by Patrick Rothfuss. So I think this, so the first one being The Name of the Wind, which is I think what most people would know it by. This is thick. This is like the mass market like version, so it's massive, but it was cheaper, so but these books are what made me fall in love with epic fantasy. Like I've always loved fantasy and like the idea of fantasy, like dragons and medieval and like whatever, but these books are just so beautifully written and have such a strong atmosphere to them. But they follow this main character name is Quoth. I believe it said Quoth. You can correct me if I'm wrong if you've read it, and you might know. But it follows him as he's telling like the story of his life. And as the narrator, like he's kind of like looking back at his life. So he's telling it as an adult, from like growing up in like this theater troupe to having like, endured this tragedy, and then he's all by himself. And then as a really, really young man, he kind of applies to get into this university where he's way too young to do it, but he has, of course, all these talents, and he's so smart and so quick and just so talented that he gets in, and like it just follows his journey through that, as well as all the adventures that brings him on. And the whole time, you know that Quoth is now an innkeeper, and you want to know why he's done with all these adventures, because he's not like an old man or anything, like he's still pretty young. So you kind of want to know where he like has gone, so that's where his life has ended up. But it was just so good. Like it was so atmospheric, and the writing is so like accessible for being a high fantasy, especially such a famous one. So like anybody, I read the first one when I was only 18, and I had no troubles with it, and I loved it so much. Series is very near and dear to my heart, and I so wish that I could go back and experience all of this like magicalness and magical worlds all over again. Also, I am part of the crowd that is mad that the third book has been taking like 10 years to come out. So then I have a very popular one, A Little Life by Hanya Yanagihara. This book, I have actually no words. I think this book took like a tiny piece of my soul and just crushed it. Crushed it for me. Thank you. But I loved it. I would love for it to crush me again. I want it to crush me for the first time. I would love to not know what happens to these beautiful, beautiful characters whom I love so much. But unfortunately, I can't feel like that. And I know what happens to them. And it hurts me every single day. And I actually might reread this soon, which I know is kind of crazy. Kind of a little weird. But I might do it. I kind of love being in pain, you know. And the writing is just really, really great. And also, if you don't know what this book is about, this follows 4 men from like their young adult years, like right after college, throughout their lives. And it in particular follows the one man named Jude, who has experienced incredible trauma in his life, but you don't know what that trauma is. And as the years go by and you get to know these characters more, you slowly get to find out more and more about what had happened to Jude. And it breaks you slowly as you go on. And you start to love these characters so much that you can't help but keep reading no matter how much it hurts. And I'm one of the people that does not think that this is trauma porn. I think that Hani Anagahara was trying to hurt us, but I don't think that it was like manipulative like some people do. However, I do not think that everyone should read this book. There is a line between like thinking a book is really sad and that recommending it to people and thinking a book is traumatic and warning people. You can enjoy it either way. But I loved this book. It hurt me and I loved it, and I would do anything to feel that again, honestly. And then we have a trilogy that I absolutely adore. They're probably my favorite books. I think it's kind of hard to say, but I have a third one here because I lent out the other first two books because I want everyone to read them. The Poppy War Trilogy by Miss R.F. Kuang. I love these books. These are also adult fantasy. These are an adult grimdark fantasy, so this trilogy basically, like, from the first book, follows our main character, Rin. And it takes place in, like, a fantasy historical China kind of situation, in what is representative of the Opium Wars and the Sino-Japanese War of the 1800s. So there's a huge historical element that was really well done, and then there's fantasy involved as well. And basically, our main character, Rin, is born in, like, and lives in, like, the poorest part of the country, and attempts to get into Guard Academy up farther north where the rich people are, and she somehow gets in and she's mind blown. She does like amazing on her entrance exam, and it follows her in her schooling, and then it follows her beyond that. I'm not going to say anything more than that because it would give away a lot. It is very dark, it's very gripping. It is very political and war-based though. So if you don't really love war stories, I wouldn't really pick them up, but I love them, so I would pick them up. I hated and loved these characters. They were so infuriating and I cared about them so much. But I like Rin, I could literally like strangle this woman. She makes me so angry. But I love that about her. I love that the characters are complex and they're morally gray. And there is like nobody quite in the right in these books, and I love that. I love a nice morally gray story. But I just like fell in love with them to the point where I think about these books like every single day, and I cannot wait because next week I'm meeting R.F. Kuang at her meet and greet in New York City, and I cannot wait for that. But I absolutely love this series. Super recommend. Would sell my soul 100% to read them for the first time again. And then last but not least, this is a book that is very near and dear to my heart. I read it for the first time when I was 12, and I have read it, I think, 30 plus times since then. I'm 22, so it's been 10 years of me loving this book. The Book Thief by Marcus Zuzak. I have a tattoo for this baby. I read her at least once a year, clearly more than that since I've read it 30 times plus in 10 years. But the older I get, it becomes more like once a year rather than like 6 times a year like when I was younger. But this book is so beautifully written. I read a bunch of Marcus Zuzak books, and I just love his writing style. He's really poetic and metaphorical, and some people think that's a little pretentious and it's a little too flowery for them, but I love it. I thought it did really well. I love the way that this book is written. It is narrated by Death, if you didn't know. But this basically takes place in World War II, follows this little family, the Hubermans, who foster a child named Liesel, and it follows them through World War II and how they cope with it, and they're struggling, it's more focused on like the German families and what they are experiencing while trying to not be like hit as like suspicious or what, but they're also trying to not be totally complacent to the government, especially the Hubermans themselves. It is tragic and heartbreaking, and I could read this book over and over again, as we've seen. I also love that there's like, I'm going to show you the one that I got a tattoo of. It's one of Max's drawings in here. I'm not going to say anything else, but ooh, if I can find it. But Max is such an important character to me. in particular. I really adore him. Oh, here it is. Here it is. It's taken me forever. So I got this page here tattooed on me. It's on my side, on my ribs. And on the bottom it says, out of sheer luck and many footsteps, I made it. It is, I feel like, applicable to many people in life. But this really moved me, and it's with me forever. I would die to read this book again for the first time. However, a part of me holds that back because now that I'm older, I don't think that it would hit me as hard, because it is young adult, as it did when I was 12. But still, I think I would like to see what it would be like for 22-year-old me to experience this for the first time, because I just love her so much. But yeah, those were my 6 books that I would absolutely sell my soul to read for the first time again. Let me know if you love these books as well, you hate them, or what your books that you would sell your soul for. But yeah, thank you.